comes to people who are New Orleans through and through and doing big things, I love to surround myself with those people because it's kind of easy to get in our own little bubble. And it's really hard to keep that big thinking, and our guest here has. So everybody, please welcome Robert LeBlanc.
Thanks for having me.
What's up, buddy? Good
How
to
you
see
doing?
you. Good. Turn around. Let me make sure you're green. Yep, there we go. Thought so. Perfect. Okay. Give us some space here. How's your Mardi Gras?
I'm good. I want to apologize in advance. My voice is shot. My godson was in the wrestling state championship meet this weekend, and I just lost my voice. I'm not in shape to cheer like I was cheering.
Yeah.
So
you don't look in shape at all.
What's that?
I said everybody was there. There's so many people I know who were in Bossier City.
Yes,
over the weekend.
It was awesome, but my voice is gone. So if you can't hear me and I need to repeat anything, please don't hesitate. Just raise your hand.
So why don't you tell us give us your 30-second of who you are.
So my name is Robert LeBlanc. I actually was born and raised in Houma, Louisiana, 50 miles southwest of here. But my parents are both from New Orleans, and I always say that the way that I grew up was really fortuitous to being in the hospitality industry. Because my parents were both from here, we came here all the time, so I fell in love with New Orleans' culture, and I was exposed to the music and the food. But growing up in Houma, Louisiana, there's just not as much. You don't have professional sports teams, you don't have college sports teams, you don't have concerts. And so in Houma, what you really do is you get together with friends and cook and just entertain and host. And so it's a magical life, and I feel like I got the best of both worlds. I went to Loyola, graduated with an economics and finance degree, and we started a record label out of Loyola. We have a bunch of talented musicians that go to Loyola, and it was a terrible business. We recorded 6 albums. We sold like 19 total records, and my mom bought 12 of those. But I do tell everybody, it's a great story in how nothing you do is a failure. It's just a building block for something else. And so while we weren't really good at selling records, we learned everything that we use today about attention to detail and marketing, branding, design, and concert and event production and promotion, which eventually evolved into a music venue, which evolved into a collection of boutique bars, restaurants, and hotels here in New Orleans and in Nashville, Tennessee. Some of our projects are Chloe, which is a hotel on St. Charles Avenue, Sylvain, which is a bistro in the French Quarter, Barrel Proof, which is a whiskey bar. We have Barracuda, Taco Bar, and Margarita Garden.
We patronize all those places. I mean, we've had our top producer event at the Chloe. We have Barracuda make us tacos for lunch and learns we do.
I appreciate that. So that's all a failed record label. So
failing your way up.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it hasn't been easy the whole way around. And I think that a lot of people look at somebody or they throw a name out like yours and they're like, man, that guy's opened the Chloe in Barrel Proof in Nashville. And like, he's just growing, and what a success. And everything just comes easy to him. He's tall, handsome, and life is great.
It's not entirely
And
true.
he has a beautiful wife.
I appreciate that.
But
that's true.
What's the truth? How do you do it?
It's just not a linear journey. And in some respects, we were really disadvantaged by coming to maturity, I guess, as a company and as human beings in the wake of in New Orleans, Katrina, the BP oil spill, and COVID. You know, we've experienced 3 black swan events essentially in 15 years in our company. And the reality of it is, it feels like with the way that I process things emotionally, I remember very vividly when Katrina happened, the record label had evolved into a concert and event production and planning business. And my wife was my fiance at the time, but she was a kindergarten teacher in Lakeview. And she taught at a Catholic school. So, you know, I'm sure everybody's got exposure to teachers, but if you know, teachers don't make a lot of money, and the things that they have in their classroom, they have to buy and put together over the course of a couple of years. So my wife lost her apartment, everything she owned in her apartment. She lost her entire classroom, and we lost all of our clients. Our company kind of got sidelined. And I emotionally remember feeling, I was 26, 27 at the time, you know, why me? Why did this happen? And the reality of it is, in hindsight, although I didn't realize it at the time, it gave us a tremendous opportunity. New Orleans was fragile. New Orleans needed expressions that people believed in it. And what happened during Katrina is, and for those of us who are old enough to go through this, we've experienced this firsthand, people's social fabrics got ripped in half. Basically, everybody had to evacuate, but only half of the people we knew were able to come back to New Orleans. And then what you also had is you had this influx of people who weren't from New Orleans, but cared about New Orleans and wanted to help us rebuild. And there was an opportunity to rebuild communities and networks. And so when we opened Republic New Orleans, the whole thing was being a private event facility, being a concert venue, being a place with the DJ just playing music like it's a bar, doing fashion shows and special events, doing fundraisers. And the idea was you just create all these different events that get people in the same room. And we trained our team specifically to get to know people individually so that they could introduce them to each other. And it became this really foundational experience, and frankly, that's what we still do at all of our places. Hopefully you'll have a good experience at our places, but we are really passionate about and committed to this idea of creating an atmosphere that fosters a sense of camaraderie and community that enables people to strengthen relationships and create memories that will last forever. So in the case of y'all's events there, hopefully y'all became closer as a group. And the reality of it is the DNA of that was born in post-Katrina New Orleans. And so the BP oil spill 5 years later, and people don't remember that as significantly as it probably was, but if you all recall, we couldn't get Gulf seafood. We had restaurants at the time. Everybody comes here for Gulf seafood. And there wasn't much in the way of conventions or tourism because the hotels were all crowded out, and all the efforts, rightfully so, were committed to the actual recovery and cleaning up the spill. And so that was a really tough time, but that's when we pivoted and kind of created Barrel Proof. And so this next evolution in our company, where we weren't just a music venue and a restaurant group, now we're starting to do these great neighborhood bars and tapping back into that feeling that we were engaged in post-Katrina. And so when COVID happened, at that point I was 42 years old, and I'd been studying Stoic philosophy, and I had the maturity and the experience to know that I could either treat this as some external thing that happened to me and be a victim, like I did, frankly, with Katrina, or I could use this as an opportunity to make it the best thing that ever happened to me. And I committed myself to that being the reality. So we never blamed COVID. With COVID, we had 5 places, and we were growing, things were going well. We lost 3 of those 5 places, so we were down to 2 places. And I was always really clear that that was not a result of COVID. It was because I didn't do things responsibly enough from a fiscal standpoint, from an operational standpoint before COVID, to put us in a better position to stave that off. And the reality of it is, and that's the truth, that's not just platitudes. Had I been a better operator, had I been more fiscally conservative, had I been smarter about managing the balance sheet instead of just managing the P&L, I was always kind of a keep it real dude. Like, money's not important. If I'm making money from this, then it undermines the meaning to me. And so, I was just kind of this keep it real artist wannabe dude. And the reality of it is I wrecked 60% of our company and 60% of the lives of the people who relied on me because I took that reckless, and frankly, it was a privilege to have that because we didn't have any dangerous situations. We didn't have any external situations. And the minute we did, because of my shortcomings and how I showed up in the world, we lost 60% of those places. Had I operated before COVID the way that we do now, we wouldn't have lost any of them, and all those jobs would have been saved. And so I was always really clear about that. And then I didn't want to use COVID as an excuse, because then I would rob myself of the learning and development that comes from it. And there was a lot of growth that came as a result of COVID. And frankly, most of it's personal. And when we talk about professional, I think you and I see the world the same way. You want people, I know Jeffrey wants you all to succeed here to the benefit of your personal health, happiness, and relationships, instead of at the expense of. Those victories, that success will be hollow if you wreck your personal life, if you wreck your health, and you're stressed and not sleeping, and you don't have important relationships. And so the reality of it is as much as we've grown professionally, we had 5 places before COVID, and the 5 years since COVID, we now have 14 places. And all of that was born from the growth that COVID brought because I didn't allow myself to use it as an external excuse. Because the reality of it is that would be a lie. It's not the reason why we lost 60% of our places. I am.
I want to push back on you.
Yeah.
Okay, because you're dealing with it right now. You open the Chloe Nashville, and then a Black Swan event happens in Nashville, right?
Yeah.
You get a terrible,
yeah.
Like how many, Robert was supposed to be here a few weeks ago, and the state of Tennessee has a rule that, like, to get your final permit from the health department, you have to be there in person, and it's his name on there. So he had to fly that morning. He was like, "Sorry, I got to fly right now to Nashville to get my final permit." Y'all get your final permit, and it finally open. Terrible freeze happens, and you really we're kind of out of business.
Yeah.
But we're all business owners too. I mean, no one gets only a couple people in here get a W-2.
Right.
Everybody else, eats what they kill.
Yeah.
And I think it's really easy in hindsight to say, it was on me. I should have saved more money. I should have been more smarter. I should have looked at the balance sheet. But when you're in it, how do you do that? How do you have that perspective when you are literally fighting that fire right now?
Well, so here's the benefit is like when you don't blame external factors, you give yourself agency. So you know that if you got yourself into this mess, you can get yourself out of this mess. And so I'm glad you brought up this freeze in Nashville. Nashville, they just went through this horrendous freeze, and it's every bit as physically damaging as a hurricane, and it's every bit as dangerous because people don't have power, and you can't get out of your house because there's black ice everywhere. And so people are freezing in their homes, 5, 10-degree weather. That's thawing out now. But because of what we went through with Katrina and because of what we went through with the BP oil spill and then COVID, it actually gives us the courage. It gives us the fortitude. And that's where being from New Orleans was a tremendous opportunity and a gift. So we're able to lead not just at Chloe and Barrel Proof in Nashville, but in Nashville at large and sharing experiences. And because we have the hindsight, the reality of it is the 3 biggest phenomenons. I'm proud of everything we do in our company. But if you just look at a return on investment, time to fruition, and what success really looks like, the 3 biggest phenomenon in my career all happened immediately post those Black Swan events. Republic was born after Katrina, Sylvain was born after the BP oil spill, and Chloe New Orleans was born after COVID. And so having that perspective, it's like this is an opportunity. We can say that woe is us, or we can just say this is going to make us tighter as a team. So here's why this is why they became the most iconic. This is what happens when you go through that stuff. It allows the team to bond in ways that would never be possible if you didn't have all that external hardship and pressure. It creates an intimate relationship between the guests and the team because the guests see how hard the team is working. And then what happens is those guests becomes partners in the experience. You're never perfect. You're not even excellent when you first open a hospitality experience. It's always an evolution. But what happens when you go through that hardship with the team and the guests, then the guests not only become acolytes, but they become trusted advisors that give you feedback on the things that you need to get right. And this is literally what happened at Chloe New Orleans. They knew the circumstances were extenuating. So if it took you an hour and 10 minutes to get your steak when it should have taken you 20 minutes, they understood and they gave us grace, and they also gave us the feedback loops. So we were able to become excellent much quicker as a result of that relationship. But that relationship never would have occurred if we had opened in 2018 and it hadn't been a result of COVID. So to answer your question, that's how we think about it. And it's not, and maybe I've retrained my mind. I study Stoic philosophy, and so the Stoics believe you can't control what happens to you externally. You can only control how you respond. And I think just enough reps of doing that, I didn't freak out. It gave us an opportunity to develop a stronger relationship with the Nashville community. We were able to do a lot of the things that we do in New Orleans, goodwill efforts, feed first responders, feed the linesmen who are in the neighborhoods trying to get power back, feed the people who are getting people out of their homes in these 4x4 vehicles. It allowed us to share experiences with other Nashville operators. So now we have relationships with other restaurateurs, bar owners, and hoteliers that we never would have had because we could experience share what the team's going to be feeling, what the guests will be feeling, and what you need to do to support the community. So it sucks financially, but in the long term, it's an opportunity. I'm going to put this down because I feel like I'm making a lot of noise.
What's your daily energy plan look like? Like, some people are big into meditation or gratitude or reading. I figure you've got to have something like that.
Yeah. So yes, that's a great question.
Maybe you work out.
Just skipping rope and home cooking.
Skipping rope and home cooking. Yeah.
Yeah, so inherently I'm pretty disorganized, frankly. And I would say I have a degree of undiagnosed ADD, although I think with modern media and phones,
that's the whole...
we all have it. But the reality of it is I'm fundamentally disorganized. I love shiny things. I'm a hugs and high five guy. Like, I'm not really a great attention to detail person. But so I was getting overwhelmed. I remember literally I would spend my days, I'd wake up and start working at maybe 8:30. I'd have 140 emails to respond to. I'd literally just respond to 140 emails, be done by 2 in the afternoon. And by the time you hit send and receive again, you have 80 back. So I would spend 10, 12-hour days literally just on email. So what I have learned to do is I have learned to create a morning routine that helps me very much prioritize and identify things that we need to get done. And so it starts with drinking 64 ounces of ice water. I genuinely feel like everybody in this world is dehydrated and we just don't realize it. So if you do that first thing in the morning, it's amazing how much it wakes you up, how much better you feel. I will do 5-6 minutes of prayers. I would say I'm more spiritual than I am religious, but I do think that people need, our support and to think of them. And I think there's a sense of gratitude. And then I'll spend 5 minutes on what I call my daily gratitude. And it's a specific practice where I'll write down 3 very specific things and literal things that occurred the day before. that I was grateful for or that I enjoyed. And it can't be my kid's health, and it's got to be something my child said. And when you do that, first of all, it does rewire your brain to kind of pay attention to things that are going well as opposed to looking at fires that you want to put out. The other thing is, on a daily basis, you pick up on things that you might have taken for granted. The beauty of a flower hanging outside of a gate on your morning walk. So it really does reprogram your mind. And I want to describe 2 specific incidences where I realized I really had reprogrammed my mind. So I used to drive this old 2006 Land Rover. I loved it. It was a total beater. It was always breaking down. I got it for like $5,000, and it was like the score of a century. But it always broke down on me at the worst possible times. I was going to Dallas for a meeting about doing all of the food and beverage to be a partner in a boutique hotel in Dallas. I left the airport like 2.5 hours early. I'm driving this Range Rover, and it dies on the interstate. Literally, I'm going like 75 miles an hour, and I'm on the way to this big appointment. And this happened 10 times prior, and I would always be like, why me? Why now? This stupid goddamn car. And this time, I genuinely remember thinking, wow, how convenient. I'm right by the veterans exit. So I just coasted to the veterans exit, and I'm like, I'll just call AAA. I have AAA, $27 a year. I'll just call AAA. Like, how convenient. And then and AAA got there in 10 minutes, and then I was like, 10 years. No, and then I was like,
felt like 10 years.
I'll just grab an Uber, And so I got an Uber 10 minutes later. So I was probably put out 25 minutes because I left for the airport. I'm like, oh, thank God I left for the airport earlier. I went to Dallas. I had a great day. I had a great meeting. It was incredibly productive. But that's an incident, literally going 75 miles an hour and your car dying on the interstate, that for me would have just wrecked not just my day, my week. And the second one's a much smaller incident, but this is important. I used to run at night. I used to run like 4 or 5 miles at night in this New Orleans heat. And my big payoff was I'd make a huge 32-ounce glass of ice water. I'd take a shower, and then I'd go sit in bed and read and have my glass of ice water. Sit down to read. I knocked the glass of ice water over. I've done that 100 times. And 99 times prior, I'm like, what the hell? I'm such an idiot. Like, I'm panicked and all this stuff. So I remember knocking the glass of ice water over. And the first thing I thought was like, wow, thank God that didn't fall on my iPad. Thank God it didn't fall on my iPhone. And I'm like, let me just go get a towel. It's everywhere. It's 32 ounces of water all over wood floors. I'm like, let me just go get 2 towels and clean it up. Went downstairs and refilled my ice water. And I had the same amount of joy that I would have had I not spilled that thing. But that's literally a situation that I'd gone through probably 90 times. I'm not exaggerating. We've spilled water our entire lives. And it was always this big overreaction that would sort of wreck my mood. And I realized being grateful that it didn't fall on my iPad or my iPhone. And so that's when I realized it started to change my life. So I do this, I'm sorry for that tangent, but I think it's really important to share the effects. People talk about gratitude, but then I don't think people do a good job explaining the effects and how it rewires your brain. And so my days and my relationships with people are so much richer than they used to be. And I'm so much more present. I'm picking up on things. And then the next thing I do is I do my daily priorities, and I always identify the number one thing. And so the number one thing for us, it's like if I could just work for 2 hours today because I had to go take my wife to a doctor's appointment, or my kid had a ball game, or there was just some emergency situation, if I just got this one thing done, it would make it a great day. So I always identify the number one thing each day. And then I'll add 1 or 2 more priorities. And that's really, really important. I think a lot of us build these long lists. And so if I have a long list, if I have 12 things, I'll write it all down, but I'll just pick 2 or 3 things to work on at a time. And that way you get deep focus and you don't have a bunch of open loops in your mind. But this number one thing is fascinating because it compounds. So if you do 200, 225 number one things in a year, that's pretty big progress, kind of working on the right things. And again, I used to be someone who would send emails all day. Or, my priority list used to be, having to go to the mailbox and grab this package or go ship this package, or, hook Clyde up with a place to buy the wristbands for Chloe. I just didn't do a good job organizing my day. So I do that, and that whole routine, drinking water, saying prayers, doing my gratitude, and doing my daily number one thing and 1 or 2 priorities other than that, that has changed my life. And so that's like a 20-minute routine each morning.
20 minutes. Changes the whole trajectory of a year.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the other thing that I do, and I don't do it every day, it's not like clockwork, but I try to walk as much as I can outside, walking talks. I think we need to be in nature, and I think we need to, so what I'll try to do if I can, like if we have a Zoom or something, and I'll just ask, would you mind if I'm off screen, and I'll take this meeting while I'm walking, and I'll just try to find a place to walk outside that at least has trees or plant life.
Love that. We have a great levee right there.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's beautiful.
why New Orleans? Why have you stayed here? Why is this the place you choose? Because I think there's this. We love this place, but it also kind of grinds sometimes.
Yeah.
Right, and you have choices. You could go to Dallas. You could have gone to Dallas. You could have probably made your whole career there and never have had to get on a plane again. You could have done. You could move everything to Nashville.
Yeah.
But you seem more committed than anyone I know here.
Yeah. First of all, New Orleans is magical, and it's a tangible thing. What makes New Orleans magical? So I had this experience in Nashville, and people ask this question all the time, and I genuinely think. People always say Charleston is New Orleans' sister city. I think it's actually Nashville because they love music just as much as we do. Theirs is country, ours is jazz. They love food as much as we do. Theirs is not quite as good as ours, but it's pretty good. And they're really kind, and they take care of people in Nashville the same way that we do here. So just through a comedy of errors, which is the story of my life and my planning, as you see, because I had to reschedule this one, I ended up in Nashville for 30 days straight. It was one of these things. I do all the cultural orientations for opening. Barrel Proof Nashville was supposed to open in early November. We were supposed to get our liquor license this day. This day became tomorrow, and I just kind of got stuck up there for a month. And it was really, really good. But two things that I noticed about Nashville that make New Orleans magical is in New Orleans, every single day there is something that moves you. Even if it pisses you off, you feel alive in New Orleans. There is art, there is beauty, there is pageantry, there's frustration. And Nashville was awesome. It's a great city. But there was like 10 or 12 days out of 30 that were wholly unremarkable. Nice day, pleasant interaction with the barista, but not like it feels in New Orleans. There's just something to it. And then the second thing is, in New Orleans, we really place a premium on relationships and social interaction and cultural interaction. And that's always been important, but it's more important now that we DM instead of call each other and we Zoom instead of meet in person. And in Nashville, because of the way it lays out geographically relative to New Orleans and just the way things work culturally, if I want to get together with a friend in Nashville, I need 2 weeks of planning because we probably live 40 minutes away from each other, and it's just not the culture. And in New Orleans, when you check out at Winn-Dixie and the clerk asks you how you're doing and how the boys are doing, she genuinely wants to know the answer to that. And there's something to be said about relationships and how we pride ourselves on interconnectivity to neighbors and loved ones here that the rest of the world just doesn't really have the way that we have. And so, I think the last thing is Nashville is an awesome city. I love Atlanta. I think Atlanta is the example of what the 21st century South can and should be. I think New Orleans has made a lot of progress with interracial relationships. But the thing I always tell everybody about Atlanta, every room you walk into, it's half black people, half white people that are working there. It's half black people, half white people that are hanging out there. And it's literally like this. It's not like the white kids are on this side and the black kids are on that side. And I think we have to do a better job of that here in New Orleans, frankly. But that being said, as great as those cities are, no matter what good work you do on behalf of Nashville or Atlanta, it's not going to have the same impact that doing good work on behalf of the city of New Orleans will do. New Orleans needs us. New Orleans is I wouldn't say it's broken, but the challenges New Orleans has is like it's born of the things that we love, but it's also, an atonement for a lot of things that we didn't get right for a really long time. And I think if you are truly someone who benefited from New Orleans gave us everything, truly everything, inspiration, my family, my friends, this life that I have that I love so much, then you're obligated to do the work to try to fix the things that we didn't fix over the last 300 years in our city's history. I just think it's just a debt that we have to repay to the city that gave us so much.
I love that. Yeah, I think that's a good one.
Thank you.
My last question, we'll take a couple from the group. What's next? What do you see as the next big thing for you all, or for you personally?
Yeah, so we have this really specific 5-year plan, and what we want to do is we want to do 3 cocktail-driven neighborhood bars per year, and 1 Chloe, which would be like a barrel proof, and 1 Chloe-style boutique hotel that's anywhere from 20 to 40 rooms. We love these really small hotels because by nature of being small, you can more deeply embed in culturally and historically significant neighborhoods where people live. And so what we're really proud of about Chloe New Orleans and Nashville is if you stay at Chloe New Orleans, we want to get you out in the neighborhood and you get a sense of what it's like to actually live in New Orleans, as opposed to staying in a great hotel in the CBD and you get a sense of what it's like to visit New Orleans, but you're not interacting with locals on a daily basis. And that's a really important part of our experience. So for the next 5 years, we'd like to do 5 more Chloe-type hotels. We'd like to do 15 more cocktail-driven neighborhood bars like Barrel Proof across 4 or 5 culturally and historically significant cities in the Southeast. That right now it's New Orleans, Nashville, Atlanta. Interested in Charleston, but that's hard to get to. We need to be able to get there via multiple direct flights a day on Southwest so that we can get there and come back and not miss things with our family.
But really you can go like once on Thursday and once on Tuesday on...
on Breeze. On Breeze,
on
I know.
Breeze,
I know.
Super helpful.
But Charlotte, cities that maybe are a little bit somewhat undiscovered, where you might be like, oh, there's a Chloe there. Maybe that's the reason I should visit that. But,
historical town, but huge, but it's built up.
But all outside New Orleans. And the reason everybody's like, well, why aren't you doing anything in New Orleans? First of all, we're building the company here. So like all the talent, all the vice presidents.
Headquarters is
it's all
right
here.
In New Orleans.
And what we export from New Orleans, we always tell everybody, like we are a New Orleans company. The heart and soul of the company runs through New Orleans. And we don't export Zydeco music or Black and Red Fish or Jambalaya. We export the joie de vivre, the sense of I see you, I love you. You get back to that cashier from Winn-Dixie. In New Orleans, I think we're really honest and express to each other how we feel about each other, and that doesn't really happen in other cities. We are a boutique company. I love boutique ownership, local ownership, and I think if you do too much in any one city, you kind of become the 800-pound gorilla on the block, the behemoth, and you also start to step on your own toes. And it's important to us. I love Neil Bodenheimer. He's one of my best friends, Cure and Val's. We love Mason from Turkey and the Wolf. And I feel like an important part of our DNA is being supportive and cheering for all those independent owners and operators. And if you do too much in any one city, you start to, rob opportunities for your own team or sort of cut into opportunities for other people. So that's just not who we are. I think after 5 years, once we have a stable base, what we'd love to look at is coming back to New Orleans and investing in awesome legacy assets that are important to our cultural history and our fabric, that have aging ownership that deserve to be preserved. We did a little bit of that with Mahoney's, the po' boy shop on Magazine Street that we bought. Dickie Brennan did that with Pascal's Manali. What happens is sometimes the real estate value of these businesses is more valuable than the businesses themselves. So what happens is mom and dad own and operate them. They are successful. They put their kids through law school or medical school, or the kids become real estate developers. And when it's time for mom and dad to retire, the kids don't want to take over. So they just sell for the value of the building, and the business just goes away. And these businesses are really important to who we are as New Orleanians. And so I'd like to think that in 5 years, once we have that plan executed, that we would have the resources, the cash flow, the stability to come back to New Orleans and start preserving some of these cultural assets. And then the other thing we want to do is we want to have an opportunity to fund the next generation of hospitality owners and operators. So we would have the resources to give people not just financial opportunities to do things, but provide them with the infrastructure, the roadmap, the playbook on how they can be successful. I really believe in independent ownership, and so I want to foster that as much as we can with training and development.
That's great.
It's a long way to answer. I'm sorry I answered all the questions.
We got time for 2 quick questions. Anybody? Nobody? Cody's definitely got a question. He's trying to bite his tongue. Go ahead.
What do you see as the trajectory of hospitality in New Orleans?
That's great. Yeah, I think we see different things.
It's changing. Okay, so hospitality, I love this industry, but it's one of the last industries where people continue to do dumb shit because it was always done that way. People are still weighing bottles on Bourbon Street, to measure how much vodka somebody might have given away or overpoured.
There's an app for that, isn't there?
Yeah. So the industry needs to change. Also, the industry for a long time didn't treat people well. We talked about succeeding to the benefit of your personal health, happiness, and relationships. We all know, whether it was in college or today, a brilliant chef or a brilliant bartender who just flew too close to the sun, went out drinking every night after work, wrecked his marriage, wrecked his health. And there's too many people that have to leave this industry to preserve their personal health, happiness, and relationships because it comes at the expense of those things. And so the industry as a whole needs to evolve a lot. And we need to treat people better that work with us. That's an important part. And it's becoming binary. And the places that you're seeing that are opening that are successful do that well, and the places that are closing or struggling don't do that well. You also need to innovate. The margins in hospitality are ridiculously bad, and it's just dumb to do that. What happens if you operate a restaurant or a bar with a 4% margin? You never build up enough cash to deal with, I'm not even talking about COVID or
daily orders.
You don't even have to, and it creates so much stress, pressure, and anxiety. So we've got to innovate on the business model. And you can do that by paying people more, training and developing them harder, and you can get more output and better output out of fewer people and you can treat them well and treat them respectfully. And so that's a big thing that needs to change with the Model 2. That being said, so there's a lot of hospitality businesses, legacy businesses that are struggling because we're just not adapting the business model. Y'all in your industry have adapted the business model tremendously. We used to, when my wife and I bought our first house, we were looking through papers, handouts. Now we're all over the internet, right? So y'all's example of innovation is great. The other thing that I think about hospitality, so I'm a techno-optimist. I think AI is going to do a few things. First of all, I think AI is going to allow us to deal with the demographic cliff that's coming. I'm on Loyola's board of directors, and so the incoming freshman class of 2026 is going to be 25% smaller than the incoming freshman class of 2025. And it's not a one-time blip, it's a permanent adjustment. And the reason is the financial crisis happened 18 years ago when these kids were, so families went from having 2 and 3 kids to having 1 and 2 kids. And it wasn't a temporary thing, it was a permanent adjustment.
Where is this?
This is at
Everywhere.
Loyola.
This is nationally. Yeah.
You said you gave one example. Where is this? I thought you served Loyola.
So this is, I'm sorry, this is across the country. So the incoming demographics of college freshmen, people who enroll in college this fall, is 25% smaller than last year and every year prior. Yes.
And it's permanent.
And it's a permanent shift.
It's a permanent shift. So,
and so, at the same time, baby boomers are retiring, and that's a huge workforce. And so there's going to be a productivity gap. So I think AI solves that. But what I think it does is it relates to each of us. Is simply, I think it makes us each 30 to 40% more productive in 30 to 40% less time. And because we're more productive, we can earn more money. And so what I think people are going to do with that time they get back, they're going to spend it in 3 ways. They're going to spend it on health and wellness, mental and physical, exercise more, meditate more. They're going to spend it on hobbies. They're going to finally learn how to speak Mandarin or Japanese. They're going to learn, they're going to fly fish. They're going to learn how to play guitar, play piano. And the third thing where I think hospitality lives is they're going to start rebuilding relationships with people. Like, we're social creatures. We haven't done the best job keeping in touch with each other. So you're going to spend a lot of that time in third places. That's not always bars, restaurants, and hotel lobbies. It's pickleball gyms, or it's golf courses, or it's tennis courts, or it's exercise facilities. But I think hospitality is going to play an increasingly important role in the future. So I don't think any of us are ever going to get to a point where we're having fun and we're going to take our wife out for our anniversary and order everything from robots and have robots bring our food. That's just not who we are. So I think what's that?
Not the Jetsons.
No. So I think it's becoming more important, but I think the business model's got to innovate, and people need to be creative, and people are so scared because they've always done it this way, and 44% is better than no % on a profit margin, but it's too much of a low profit margin business. We have to kind of innovate. And the other thing is we have to do as hospitality entrepreneurs, which I try to do, but when I was growing up, everybody was full of shit in hospitality. Everybody, everybody was on fire. Everybody was packed to the gills until the weekend they closed, and it's like, wait, what happened? I thought y'all were killing it, So there's so much false bravado, and we're not sharing best practices. We're not sharing mistakes. And so, as an industry, we haven't done the best job supporting each other to innovate and evolve. And so those things need to happen, and I think they will happen. They are happening, but they need to happen if some of these legacy places want to stick. But I do think it's going to become more important, not less.
Well, Robert, I hate to cut you off, but we got to keep rolling.
Yeah, love it.
See why I think a lot of them. Thanks for being here.
Thank you,
Really appreciate it.
I appreciate that. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty.
Yeah, same to y'all.